What if your brain just started writing its own reality? Today, we're diving into a deeply personal and, frankly, medically fascinating case that really challenges everything we think we know about memory, about grief, and even consciousness itself. We're going to uncover what happens when a brain, after a traumatic stroke, begins to create its own phantom realities. So it all starts with this one, seemingly simple question from a mother to her daughter. But here's the thing, this question, it carries an impossible fact. The person she's asking about, her son Samir, he passed away years ago. This single question just opens a window into this heartbreaking neurological puzzle that we are going to unpack today. That question, right there, about a call that never actually happened, that's our entry point into this whole case study. It points to a profound and really persistent hallucination, a phantom reality that was constructed by a brain first grappling with loss and then damaged by a major medical event. Okay, to really get the full clinical picture, you have to look at the timeline. It all kicks off in March 2022 with the tragic death of her son, Samir. That event triggers an initial decline in her memory. Fast forward 3 years, and she suffers a severe stroke, which makes her cognitive state much, much worse. By April of 2026, all these tragic events have just compounded, leading to this vivid recurring hallucination we're digging into. Now, the content of the hallucination is what makes this so compelling. The mother creates this memory of her son calling her, and on the call, he says, "I'm dead." Now, of course, this is literally true, but her brain doesn't interpret it as a statement of fact. Oh no. It sees it as a kind of coded message, a cry for help, that she now feels she has to decipher. So her brain doesn't just hear "I'm dead" and stop. Instead, it filters that phrase through a colloquial Arabic lens, where you might say you're dead from hunger or dead from cold to describe really extreme, current suffering. So her hallucination isn't just some passive memory, it's an active problem to be solved. Every single day, she asks her daughter what the call could have meant, totally desperate to solve her son's phantom crisis. To really understand these heartbreaking events, we need to step back from the story for a second and look at the neurological impact of the stroke. I mean, what is actually happening in her brain to make her perception of reality fractured like this? Well, the key clinical term here is confabulation. It's not lying, and it's so much more than just forgetting. The best way to think about it is that the brain is like an author, and when it gets to a blank page in the story of someone's memory, it doesn't just leave it empty, it writes a whole new scene. This happens when the parts of our brain that act as fact checkers, like the prefrontal cortex, get damaged. The storyteller is basically left without an editor, and it just produces these fabricated memories that feel completely 100% real. You know, medical analysis of cases like this shows that a stroke can do way more than just affect motor skills. It can literally ignite what's been described as abnormal activity in the imagination. The brain's ability to tell the difference between its own internal thoughts and what's happening outside, that line gets blurred and it starts building these entirely new and internally consistent worlds. So if the brain is building these new realities, what are the blueprints? How does it construct such elaborate fabrications? Well, clinical observation in this case shows a really fascinating kind of four-step process. First, recent, real memories are just wiped out, gone, leaving this huge void. Second, the imagination doesn't just fill in the gaps, it rushes in to construct a whole new reality. Third, the distant past and the present start to blend together, so people who are long gone might suddenly seem like they're right there in the room. And finally, and this is the most profound part, even core pieces of your identity, like your personal tastes, can get overwritten by the logic of this new, fabricated narrative. And the scale of this confabulation is just staggering. Get this. On one occasion, the patient was left alone for just 30 minutes. That's it. A simple, brief reality. But in her mind, she hadn't been waiting at all. She believed she had lived an entire life during that short time, and that she'd been busy with this complex task of reading a booklet and following a strict set of rules. Now, these fabricated realities aren't just random noise. They actually have their own internal logic. And there was this fascinating incident involving her favorite food that demonstrates this perfectly. So here's the clinical puzzle. The patient, who loves okra more than pretty much any other food, is offered it for lunch, and she flatly refuses to eat it. Now, from the outside, that seems completely irrational, right? A clear sign of her deteriorating condition. But from inside her reality, her choice was perfectly logical. So here's the logic from her perspective. In that entire life she lived, during that 30-minute gap, she was reading a booklet. A core rule was set up. She must answer no to any question she's asked. The booklet then describes how delicious okra is, right before someone in her hallucination asks her, "Do you want okra?" Well, if you're following the rules of your new reality, the only possible answer is no. So when her daughter asked her why she refused her favorite dish, her explanation was simple and, within her framework, completely rational. She just said, "That's how they wanted me to answer." Her own personal preference was less real to her than the rules of the world her brain had just built from scratch. Okay, so this clinical framework, which explains the, impeccable logic of the Okra incident, it gives us the tools to finally understand that phantom phone call from her son. We can now see it not as some random glitch, but as another complex story, this time built from the most powerful materials her brain has left. So maybe we can reframe this whole condition. The brain isn't just broken, it's a storyteller that has lost its script. And without recent memories to ground it in reality, it has to improvise. And what does it use? It uses the most potent, emotionally charged material it has access to: deep-seated grief for a lost son, an enduring love, and memories from the distant past. So the phantom call from Samir, it wasn't just a malfunction. It was a creation. It was the brain's attempt to build a narrative around the powerful, unresolved emotion of grief, to give that feeling a shape, a voice, and a problem that needed to be solved. This case really shows us that even when it's damaged, the brain's fundamental drive is to make meaning out of chaos. Ultimately, this whole case forces us to confront a really profound question. I mean, we all live inside a reality that's constructed by our minds. And this story gives us a rare glimpse into what happens when that master storyteller loses its grip and begins to tell stories that are just as logical, just as compelling, but are drawn from a world of its own making.